Dr. Hyan-woo pressed his face against the observation window of the research shuttle. Below them, the green and brown surface of planet Kethra stretched endlessly. This was his third year studying the wildlife on this dangerous world, but he still felt amazed every time he saw it. "Readings show movement in Sector 7, said Yoon-ji from her seat at the scanner controls. Her fingers moved quickly over the blue buttons. "Looks like a pack of Vorthok moving through the forest." Taemin looked up from his engineering station. "How many this time? 6 adults, maybe more, hiding in the trees." Hyan-woo nodded and made notes on his tablet. The Vorthok were the reason. They were here. These creatures were the most feared predators in the known galaxy. They stood as tall as a human, but were much stronger. Their dark fur could change color to match their surroundings. Sharp teeth filled their long mouths, and their claws could cut through metal. Every intelligent species in the galaxy knew about. Vorthok parents told scary stories about them to their children. Space traders would not even fly near planets where Vorthok lived. The creatures had never left their homeworld, but their reputation spread everywhere. "Take us down to the landing," Zone Hyun-woo said, "but keep the engines ready. If they notice us, we leave fast." The shuttle moved through the thick clouds. Rain hit the windows as they dropped lower. Kethra had storms almost every day. The air was hot and wet, perfect for the creatures that lived here. Velthor, their Saurian team member, shifted nervously in his seat. His green scales turned darker when he was worried. "This is dangerous. Human Hyan-woo. My people have wise saying. Do not poke the sleeping Deathbringer." "We are not poking anything," Hyan-woo replied. "We are just watching from far away." Quartz mindset made a sound like breaking glass. The crystal being communicated through light patterns and sounds. The agreement with Saurian colleague, Vorthok study, brings only death. Yoon-ji looked back at their alien teammates. "We have been doing this for 3 years. Nothing bad has happened yet." "Yet is important word," Velthor said. The shuttle landed in a small clearing surrounded by tall trees. Hyan-woo checked his equipment one more time. He wore a full protection suit with cameras and scanners built in. All 3 humans did the same. "Remember the rules," Hyan-woo said to his team. "Stay together. Do not make loud sounds. If you see a Vorthok, do not run. Move slowly back to the shuttle." They walked into the forest. The trees here grew bigger than any on Earth. Their trunks were so wide that 10 people holding hands could not reach around them. Strange birds called from the branches above. Small animals ran through the bushes around their feet. Taemin carried the portable scanner. It would tell them if any large predators were nearby. So far, it stayed quiet. They walked for 2 hours. Yoon-ji took pictures of interesting plants. Hyan-woo recorded the sounds of different animals. This was the kind of work they usually did. Watch from far away. Learn about how the creatures lived. Never get too close. "Wait," Taemin said suddenly. He looked at his scanner with a confused expression. "This is strange. What do you see?" Hyan-woo asked. "The scanner shows Vorthok signatures ahead, but they are not moving. They have been in the same place for many hours." Velthor made a worried hissing sound. "Dead Vorthok means bigger predator nearby." "We should leave now, or they are sleeping," Yoon-ji said. "It is the hot part of the day." Hyan-woo thought about this. In 3 years of study, they had never found Vorthok that stayed still for so long. These creatures always moved. They hunted during the day and traveled at night. "Let us take a closer look," he decided. "But we stay very careful." They moved forward slowly. The forest became quieter. Even the birds stopped singing. Taemin's scanner showed they were getting close to the Vorthok location. Then they smelled it. "The smell of death and old blood," their Yoon-ji whispered, pointing. Ahead, 2 adult Vorthok lay on the ground near a large rock formation. Their dark fur was torn and bloody. Flies buzzed around their bodies. They had been dead for at least 3 days. "Territorial fight," Hyan-woo said quietly. 2 males probably. Fought over hunting grounds. Velthor backed away. "Dead predators attract scavengers. Dangerous scavengers. We should go." But Yoon-ji was looking at something else. Her face went pale behind her helmet glass. "Hyan-woo, look at the rocks." He turned to see what she meant. Behind the dead adults, hidden in a small cave between the rocks, were 3 small shapes. They were moving. Vorthok cubs. Hyun-woo felt his heart beat faster. In all the years that different species had studied Vorthok, no one had ever seen their young. The creatures kept their cubs hidden and protected. These three were tiny, probably only a few weeks old. The parents died fighting, Yoonji said softly. The cubs had been alone for days. The little Vorthok were crying. The sound was high and sad, like lost children calling for their mothers. They were much smaller than the adults, about the size of house cats. Their fur was lighter in color, more gray than black. They are starving, Taemin observed. Look, how thin they are. Velthar made an angry noise. This is natural way. Strong survive, weak die, we do not interfere. Those are babies, Yeonji said. Babies that will grow into killing machines. Quartz Mine 7, added with flashing lights. Hyun-woo stared at the cubs. They were so small and helpless. One of them had crawled closer to its dead mother and was trying to nurse. The sight made his chest hurt. All his life, humans had been taught that every intelligent life was precious. Even predators had their place in the universe. But these cubs were different. If they died here, no other Vorthok would come to help them. Their species did not care for orphans. We should report this to the research station, Taemin suggested. This is important scientific data. And then what? Hyun-woo asked. We just watch them die. Yes, Velthor said firmly. That is what every wise species would do. The cubs cried again. The sound cut through the forest like a knife. Hyun-woo looked at his human teammates. He could see the same pain in their eyes that he felt in his heart. We are not every other species, he said quietly. Back on the shuttle, the debate continued. Velthor and Quartz Mine 7 refused to even discuss helping the cubs. To them, it was against all natural law. Predator young should die, if their parents could not protect them. But the three humans could not stop thinking about those sad cries. Echoing through the forest as they flew back to the research station, Hyun-woo made a decision that would change everything. The research station, Harmony 1, floated in space above planet Kethra like a metal flower with many arms. Each arm housed different species and their laboratories. The human section was painted white and blue, colors that reminded the crew of Earth's sky. Dr. Hyun-woo sat in the station commander's office, facing Captain Dae-jung across a metal desk. The captain was an older man with gray hair and tired eyes. He had been running space stations for 20 years. You want to do what? Captain Dae-jung asked. We want to rescue the Vorthok cubs, Hyun-woo repeated. They will die if we do nothing. The captain rubbed his forehead. These creatures will grow up to be the most dangerous predators in the galaxy. They are babies now, Yoonji said from her chair beside Hyun. Helpless babies who did nothing wrong. Taemin nodded. We have studied Vorthok behavior for 3 years. We know more about them than anyone else in the galaxy. If anyone can raise them safely, it is us. Captain Dae-jung looked at the three. Scientist, he had worked with humans long enough to recognize that stubborn look in their eyes. The other species on this station will not be happy about this. We know, Hyun-woo admitted, but we cannot just let them starve. The captain was quiet for a long moment. No other species can know until the cubs are here and safe, and you will take full responsibility for whatever happens. We understand, Hyun-woo said. 2 hours later, a small shuttle left the station, heading for Kethra's surface. Back to the forest felt different this time. What they were about to do went against everything the galactic community believed about predator species. Are we doing the right thing? Taemin asked quietly. But doing nothing feels wrong. They landed in the same clearing as before. The walk to the rock formation seemed shorter this time. When they reached the spot where the adult Vorthok had died, they found the bodies covered with scavenger insects. The smell was much worse now, but the cubs were still alive. All three were huddled together in the small cave. They looked weaker than before. Their cries were softer, as if they barely had energy left to make sounds. Poor little ones, Yeonji whispered. She pulled a special containment box from her pack. It was designed to hold dangerous specimens, but she had modified it with soft padding and air holes. How do we pick them up without getting hurt? Taemin asked. Even as babies, Vorthok had sharp claws. Hyun-woo had thought about this problem. He pulled thick gloves from his pack, the kind used for handling aggressive animals. Very carefully, the first cub was the smallest. When Hyun-woo reached for it, the little creature tried to bite him, but it was too weak to do much damage. He lifted it gently and placed it in the containment box. The second cub was larger and stronger. It scratched at his gloves and made angry sounds. But once it was in the box with its sibling, it calmed down. The third cub did not fight at all. It seemed the weakest of the three. Haiyan-Wu worried it might not survive the trip back to the station. There, Young-ji said softly as they closed the box. Now you are safe. What if they die? Anyway? Taiman asked. We will figure it out, Haiyan-Wu said. They had prepared a room in the science lab, far from where the other species worked. The room had been modified with strong walls and a special air system. They had installed cameras to watch the cubs all the time. They looked around the room with big, dark eyes. Their ears moved back and forth, listening to every sound. They are beautiful, Unjae said. The cubs were indeed beautiful in their own way. Their gray fur was soft and fluffy. Their faces looked almost like a mix between a cat and a wolf. Their paws were large, showing how big they would grow someday. Now, what? Taiman asked. Haiyan-Wu remembered that most mammal babies drank added proteins that Vorthok might need. To their relief, the cubs drank it eagerly, but keeping them fed was only the beginning of their problems. The next morning, Captain Dae-jung called an emergency meeting. The alien crew members had discovered what the humans had done. Velthor stood in the meeting room with his scales turned dark red with anger. You have brought death onto this station, he hissed at the humans. Quartz Mine 7 flashed angry. Purple lights. Violation of natural order. Dr. Kongmin from the Saurian Science Division shook his head sadly. Humans, your species always acts with emotion instead of wisdom. These creatures will kill us all when they grow up. Other alien crew members agreed loudly. The tall, thin Altarians wanted to leave the station immediately. Human section, under strict security. When those things grow large enough to break free, remember that we told you this was foolish. Several alien crew members requested immediate transfers to other stations. Within 2 days, half of the non-human staff had left Harmony 1, but the 3 humans did not change their minds. We will prove that compassion is stronger than fear. Feed them, the cubs would run toward them instead of hiding. Look at that, Yoonji said with wonder. They recognize us. The cubs seemed to know their human caretakers. They would calm down when they heard human voices. Maybe this will work after all, Taiman said hopefully. But in the command center, Captain Dae-jung received a message that made his blood run cold. 3 months had passed since the humans rescued the Vorthok cubs. The little creatures had grown much bigger and stronger. What started as tiny, helpless babies were now the size of medium dogs. Dr. Haiyan-Wu watched them play in their expanded room. The humans had been forced to make the space larger twice already. The cubs were growing faster than anyone expected. Baram is getting too rough with his brothers, Yoonji said, pointing to the largest cub. They had given the cubs human names. Baram meant wind, and he was always moving and full of energy. Hahan, whose name meant sky, was the gentlest of the 3. He liked to sit quietly and watch everything around him. Nuri, meaning world, was curious about everything and always getting into trouble. Look at their teeth, Taiman observed, much sharper than last week. It was true. The cubs were developing the fangs that would make them deadly hunters someday. But for now, they used them mainly to chew on the toys the humans had made for them. Dr. So-young entered the room carrying her research tablet. She was the station's expert on alien psychology, and she had been studying the cubs' behavior. Interesting development, she announced. The cubs show attachment patterns similar to Earth mammals. They have bonded with us as their parent figures. What does that mean exactly? Haiyan-Wu asked. It means they see you 3 as their family. When you enter the room, their stress levels drop. When you leave, they become anxious. This is not normal predator behavior. As if to prove her point, Nuri ran over to Haiyan-Wu and rubbed against his leg like a giant cat. The cub made a sound that was almost like purring. They trust us completely, Yoonji said with amazement, but their peaceful routine was interrupted. By an announcement over the station's communication system, all department heads report to the main conference room immediately. We have visitors from the Galactic Council. Haiyan-Wu felt his stomach drop. He had been dreading this moment for weeks. The main conference room was crowded with beings from different species. The Galactic Council delegation included representatives from 12 different worlds. They sat around a large table, their various forms of communication filling the room with sounds, lights, and smells. The delegation leader was Ambassador X9, a tall being made of what looked like living metal. When it spoke, its voice sounded like music played on metal instruments. "We are here to investigate reports of illegal predator cultivation," Ambassador X9 announced. "This activity violates 17 different galactic safety protocols." Captain Daejung stood up. The humans acted to save orphaned young from certain death. Their actions were motivated by compassion. "Compassion is irrelevant when public safety is threatened," replied Counselor Vexbrim, a being that looked like a giant insect. "Vorthok are classified as extreme danger predators. No civilized species would attempt to domesticate them." Dr. Hyan Wu requested permission to speak. "Honored counselors, we are not trying to domesticate the Vorthok. We are simply caring for 3 orphaned cubs until they can survive on their own." "And then what?" asked Counselor Membranesong, whose translucent body pulsed with different colors. "You release 3 trained killers into the galaxy." "We believe they can be different," Yunji said boldly. "They have been raised with kindness instead of violence. They might become bridges between their species and ours." The council members made various sounds of disbelief and anger. Several demanded to see the cubs immediately. "That might not be wise," Captain Daejung warned. "The cubs are very protective of their human caretakers. Unknown beings might make them aggressive." "We will see these creatures now, Ambassador," X9 insisted. The group moved through the station toward the human section. Other crew members watched nervously as the large delegation passed by. Word had spread quickly that the council was here to judge the humans' actions. When they reached the cubs' room, the 3 Vorthok immediately sensed strangers nearby. They grouped together in the center of the room, making low, growling sounds. Their fur began to change color, becoming darker and harder to see. "Dangerous," whispered Counselor Vexbrim, backing away from the reinforced glass window. But when Hyan Wu entered the room, the cubs' behavior changed completely. They ran to him, making happy sounds and rubbing against him. The threatening growls became gentle purrs. "Remarkable," admitted Counselor Membranesong. "They show clear pack bonding with the human." Ambassador X9 was less impressed. "Temporary conditioning. When they reach full size, instinct will override training. They will kill their caretakers first." Dr. So-young stepped forward with her research data. "Our psychological studies show otherwise. These cubs have developed emotional attachments that go beyond simple conditioning. They demonstrate empathy, something never recorded in wild Vorthok." "Show us," demanded the Ambassador. So-young. They activated a video screen. It showed footage from the previous week. In the video, Taemin had accidentally cut his hand while preparing the cubs' food. When they smelled blood, instead of becoming excited like wild predators would, the cubs had become worried. They approached Taemin gently and made soft, concerned sounds. They were trying to comfort him, So-young explained. "This behavior is impossible for wild predators. It shows they have learned to care about others' well-being." The council members watched in silence as more videos played. The cubs sharing food with each other, the cubs being gentle with a small maintenance robot, Haniel even trying to groom Youngji's hair like he groomed his brothers. "This changes nothing," Counselor Vexbrim finally said. "They are still predators, still dangerous." "Every species was dangerous once," Hyan Wu replied. "Humans were hunters too. We learned to be more than our instincts." "Humans never hunted other intelligent species for food," the counselor shot back. "No, but we hunted each other for territory, resources, and revenge. We were capable of great cruelty, but we chose to become better." The debate continued for hours. Some council members seemed impressed by the cubs' behavior. Others remained convinced that the humans had made a terrible mistake. Finally, Ambassador X9 called for a decision. The council will vote. All in favor of immediate termination of this experiment. 6 hands, claws, and appendages rose into the air. All opposed for members voted against termination. The remaining 2 members abstain. The motion passes by a narrow margin. The Vorthok cubs must be destroyed within 7 standard days. Hyan Wu felt like he had been punched in the stomach. "Please, give us more time. Let us prove that this can work." 7 days. the ambassador repeated coldly. Then this dangerous experiment ends. As the council members filed out of the room, Haiyan Wu looked through the window at the three cubs. They were playing together, unaware that their lives had just been sentenced to end.eu. Unji put her hand on his shoulder. "We will not let this happen. How can we stop it?" Taemin asked quietly. "The council has made their decision." "Then we change their minds," Haiyan Wu said with determination. "We have 7 days to prove that compassion is stronger than fear." But even as he spoke, he wondered if 7 days would be enough to overturn thousands of years of galactic prejudice against predator species in their room. The cubs continued to play, making the soft sounds that meant they were happy and safe. They trusted their human family completely. The humans could not let that trust be betrayed. 6 months had passed since the Galactic Council's ultimatum. The humans had managed to delay the termination order by providing constant reports on the cubs' progress. But time was running out, and the cubs were growing larger every day, now stood as tall as Haiyan Wu's waist. His muscles had developed, and his movements showed the natural grace of a born hunter. Hanuel remained gentler, but was equally strong. Nuri had become the most curious, always exploring every corner of their expanded living space. The cubs had learned to understand simple human words. They knew their names and could follow basic commands like sit and stay. But more importantly, they had learned to control their strength around their human caretakers. Dr. Mi Kyung, a behavioral specialist who had joined the team, worked with the cubs every day. She taught them games that helped them practice self-control. She also studied their emotional responses to different situations. "They are remarkable," she told Haiyan Wu during one of their daily meetings. "Their intelligence is far beyond what we expected. They solve problems, show emotions, and even seem to have a sense of right and wrong." But their peaceful routine was shattered on a Tuesday morning. Jin Ho, a maintenance worker, was repairing a ventilation unit in the cubs' room. He had worked around the cubs before and was comfortable with them. The cubs knew him and usually ignored him while he worked. But today was different. Jin Ho was using a new tool that made high-pitched sounds. The noise seemed to upset Baram, who kept pacing and making anxious sounds. "Maybe you should work on that later," Yeonji suggested when she noticed Baram's behavior. "Almost finished," Ginho replied, not looking up from his work. What happened next occurred in seconds. The tool made an especially loud screech. Baram jumped backward in surprise, bumping into Ginho. The man lost his balance and fell, hitting his head on the metal ventilation unit. Blood began to flow from a cut on Jinho's forehead. Baram immediately backed away, his eyes wide with shock. He made distressed sounds and looked around as if asking for help. The other cubs also seemed upset, whimpering and staying close to the walls. Jinho Yoonji called out, rushing into the room. "Are you hurt?" The maintenance worker sat up slowly, touching his bleeding head. "I think I am okay, just a cut." But the damage was done. Word spread quickly through the station that one of the Vorthok had injured a human. By the time Jinho was treated in the medical bay, the story had grown much worse. "I heard it was a vicious attack," one crew member whispered. "The beasts tried to kill him," said another. Captain Daejung called an emergency meeting. The remaining alien crew members demanded immediate action. Velthor stood up, his scales bright red with anger. "We warned you this would happen. Now human blood has been spilled. How many more must die before you admit your mistake?" "It was an accident," Haiyan Wu protested. Baram was startled by the tool's noise. "He did not mean to hurt anyone." "Intent does not matter," replied Dr. Kangmin. "The creature is too dangerous to keep. What happens when it grows larger? When it is truly hungry?" Even some of the human crew members looked worried. They had supported the project before, but seeing actual injury made them question the wisdom of keeping 3 predators on the station. Captain Daejung looked tired. "The Galactic Council will use this incident to demand immediate termination. I do not know if I can protect the cubs anymore." That evening, Haiyan Wu sat alone in the cubs' room. All 3 young Vorthok lay quietly in their sleeping area. They seemed to sense that something was wrong. Baram approached slowly, his head low. He made soft, apologetic sounds and gently touched Haiyan Wu's hand with his nose. "You did not mean to hurt him, did you?" Haiyan Wu asked softly. The young boy made a sad sound and lay down beside him. The other cubs joined them, forming a protective circle around their human caretaker. Dr. So-young entered the room carrying her research equipment. "I have been analyzing the security footage from this morning," she said. "And what did you find?" "Something interesting. Watch Bahram's body language right after the accident." She activated a small screen. The footage showed the moment when Jin-ho fell and hit his head. Bahram's reaction was not aggressive or predatory. Instead, the young Vorthok showed clear signs of distress and concern. See how he immediately backs away? How he looks around for help? This is not predator behavior. This is the behavior of someone who accidentally hurt a friend and wants to make it better. Will anyone else see it that way? Hyenwoo asked. "I do not know. Fear is a powerful thing. It makes people see monsters where there might be friends." The next morning brought worse news. Ambassador Vexnin had returned to the station with a larger delegation. They demanded to see the injured human and hear his testimony. Ginho sat in the medical bay with a bandage on his head. The cut was not serious, but it looked dramatic. The council members gathered around his bed. "Tell us exactly what happened," Ambassador Vexnin commanded Jin-ho. Looked uncomfortable with all the attention. "I was fixing the air system. My tool made a loud noise. The young Vorthok got scared and bumped into me. I fell and hit my head." "The creature attacked you, Counselor," Vexbrim stated. "No," Jin-ho said firmly. "It was an accident. The young one looked more scared than I was." "Fear can make predators more dangerous," the counselor insisted. "This was not a predator attack," Jin-ho replied. "I have worked around dangerous animals before. I know the difference between an accident and an attack." But his words did not seem to convince the council members. They had already made up their minds. Dr. Mi-kyung requested permission to speak. "Honored counselors, I would like to demonstrate the cub's actual behavior. With your permission, I will conduct a controlled test." "What kind of test?" Ambassador Vexnin asked suspiciously. "A test of their ability to control themselves in stressful situations. If they are simply mindless predators, they will fail. If they have truly learned compassion and self-control, they will pass." The council members discussed this among themselves. Finally, they agreed to watch the demonstration. The test took place in the cubs' room, with the entire delegation watching. Through the reinforced windows, Mi-kyung entered with a piece of fresh meat, the cubs' favorite food. All three cubs immediately focused on the food. Their natural hunting instincts kicked in. But instead of fighting over it or trying to take it by force, they sat down and waited. Chair Mi-kyung said simply. Bahram, the largest and strongest, took the meat. But instead of eating it all himself, he carefully divided it into 3 pieces. He gave 1 piece to each of his brothers before eating his own portion. The council members watched in stunned silence. "This is impossible," whispered Counselor Membrane Song. "Predators do not share food, they compete for it." "These predators do," Mi-kyung said proudly, but the real test came next. Mi-kyung pretended to trip. And fall? She cried out as if she was hurt. All 3 cubs immediately ran to her, not to take advantage of her weakness, but to help. They made concerned sounds and gently nuzzled her, trying to comfort her. Remarkable. This still does not prove they will remain peaceful as adults. "No," Hyenwoo agreed, stepping forward. "But it proves they can learn. It proves they can choose to be better than their instincts. Is that not what civilization is about? The choice to be more than what nature made us?" The council members fell. Silent, considering his words, the vote was closer this time, but the result was the same. The cubs would have to be destroyed, but as the council prepared to leave, an unexpected message arrived at the station. It came from the surface of planet Ket Hera. It was from the Vorthok themselves. The message from planet Kethra was unlike anything the galactic community had ever received. It was not spoken in words or transmitted through normal communication channels. Instead, it came as a series of complex patterns carved into the ground. Near the research station's landing zone, Dr. Yi and Su, the station's linguistic expert, studied the aerial photographs with growing excitement. She had been working for months to understand Vorthok communication methods. "These are not random marks," she announced to the assembled team. "This is a language, a sophisticated language." Captain Dae-jung looked at the images on the main screen. The patterns were intricate, with flowing lines that seemed to tell a story. "What do they say?" "It is difficult to translate exactly, but the meaning is clear. The Vorthok want to meet. They want to discuss the young ones we have taken. The Galactic Council delegation was skeptical. Predators do not negotiate, Counselor Vex Prime stated. This is probably a trap. But Hyanwu felt his heart racing with hope. What if it is not a trap? What if they have been trying to communicate with us all along, and we just never understood? Ambassador Vex9 made a sound like breaking metal. Even if they can communicate, it changes nothing. They are still dangerous predators. So were humans. Once upon a time, Dr. So-young pointed out, every intelligent species has a violent past. The question is whether they can grow beyond it. The debate continued for hours, but finally, the council agreed to allow a small team to meet. With the voice, if nothing else, it might provide valuable scientific data about the species. The shuttle that descended to Kethra carried only 3 passengers, Hyanwu, Yunji, and Dr. Yansu. They landed in the same clearing where they had first discovered the orphaned cubs. The forest was quiet as they walked toward the meeting place indicated in the ground patterns. Each step felt heavy with the weight of history. No intelligent species had ever successfully communicated with wild Vorthok before. They found the adult Vorthok waiting in a large clearing surrounded by tall trees. There were 5 of them, all magnificent specimens of their species. Their dark fur gleamed in the filtered sunlight, and their powerful muscles showed their deadly potential. But they were not behaving aggressively. Instead, they sat in a circle, watching the humans approach with intelligent, curious eyes. The largest Vorthok, clearly the pack leader, rose to its feet. It was enormous, much larger than the cubs back on the station. Its presence was both terrifying and majestic. But when it spoke, using a combination of sounds, body movements, and scent markers, Dr. Yansu was ready with her translation equipment. It says, "Welcome, small soft ones," she translated, her voice filled with wonder. It thanks us for caring for the lost young ones. Hyanwu stepped forward carefully. Tell them we are honored to meet them. Tell them we have tried to care for the cubs as best we could. Yansu worked to translate this into the complex Vorthok language. It took several attempts, but finally the pack leader seemed to understand. Its response was longer and more complex. It says, ... the cubs were from their pack family. The parents died in territorial dispute with another pack. They searched for the young ones, but could not find them. They were looking for the cubs, Yunji said with amazement. They cared about them. The conversation continued for over an hour. Through Dr. Yansu's translations, a remarkable story emerged. Society was far more complex than anyone had imagined. They had families, traditions, and even a form of government. The reason they had never communicated with other species was not because they were mindless predators, but because they had assumed other species were too primitive to understand them. They thought we were animals, Yansu explained, just like we thought they were animals. But the most shocking revelation came when the pack leader asked to see the cubs. It wanted to know how they had changed under human care. Back on the station, the Galactic Council delegation watched nervously as the adult Vorthok were transported to Harmony 1. The creatures had agreed to come peacefully, but their presence filled the station with tension. When the pack leader entered the cubs' room, something extraordinary happened. The 3 young Vorthok ran to greet the adult, making joyful sounds. But they did not stay with the pack leader. Instead, they ran back to their human caretakers, as if introducing their 2 families to each other. The pack leader studied the cubs carefully. It sniffed them, listened to their sounds, and watched their behavior. Finally, it turned to the humans and made a long, complex statement. It says, Dr. Yansu translated with tears in her eyes that the cubs have learned something new. Something that pureborn Vorthok do not know. They have learned to choose peace over HuntNet. The pack leader continued speaking, and Yansu struggled to keep up with the translation. It says, the cubs are still true Vorthok, but they are also something more. They are ... bridge builders, path makers between the hunt people and the soft people. Ambassador Vex9 listened to all of this with growing disbelief. You expect us to believe that these predators want peace? The pack leader seemed to understand the ambassador's tone, even without translation. It approached the reinforced window where the council members stood watching. Instead of showing aggression, it performed what Dr. Yansu recognized as a formal greeting gesture. It offers Friendship bond, she translated. It says the hunt people are tired of being alone in the stars. They want to learn from the soft people, just as the soft people have learned from caring for Vorthok young. The council members were stunned into silence. This went against everything they thought they knew about predator species. But the real surprise came when the pack leader made one final request. It wanted to leave to adult Vorthok on the station to learn from the humans, just as the humans had taught the cubs. In exchange, it offered to share Vorthok knowledge about survival, hunting, and the many secrets of their homeworld. This is impossible, Counselor Vex Prim said weakly. Predators and prey species cannot coexist. Maybe, Hyenwu replied, but maybe it is time to find out if impossible things can become possible. The cubs seemed to understand that something important was happening. They moved between the humans and the adult Vorthok, making soft sounds that Dr. Yansu translated as family together and peace hope. For the first time in galactic history, predator and prey species were talking about cooperation instead of conflict. The cubs that the humans had saved were becoming exactly what Meek Young had predicted, bridge builders between two very different worlds. But the real test would come when the Galactic Council had to decide whether to allow this unprecedented experiment in interspecies cooperation to continue. The vote would determine not just the fate of 3 orphaned cubs, but the possibility of a completely new kind of galactic civilization. The presence of adult Vorthok on Harmony 1 changed everything. The 2 adults who had volunteered to stay were called Thunderstep and Moonwhisper by the humans, though their real names were complex combinations of sounds and scents that no human throat could produce. Thunderstep was a massive male, nearly twice the size of the cubs. His presence was intimidating, but he showed remarkable patience as Dr. Yansu worked to improve communication between the species. Moonwhisper was smaller and more curious, often approaching the observation windows to watch the humans work. The cubs were overjoyed to have adult Vorthok on the station. They spent hours learning traditional hunting techniques and pack behaviors, but they also continued to show their human-learned traits of gentleness and sharing. "Look at this," Dr. Meek Young said, recording the cubs' behavior. "Barum is teaching Thunderstep how to be gentle with the equipment. The adult is learning from the young one." It was true. The cubs had become teachers, showing the adults how to move carefully in the human environment, how to control their strength, and how to interact safely with other species. But not everyone was happy with these developments. News of the Vorthok alliance had spread throughout the galaxy. Many species reacted with panic and outrage. The Altarian government recalled their ambassador from the Galactic Council, calling the situation madness that will doom us all. The Crystalline Collective issued warnings about the dangers of predator appeasement. Protests erupted on dozens of worlds. Signs reading "Death to predator lovers and humans have betrayed us all" appeared in alien cities. Some species threatened to cut all ties with humanity if the alliance continued. But there were also surprising supporters. The Gentle Ones, a species known for their pacifism, issued a statement praising the humans' compassion. The ancient scholars who had studied galactic history for thousands of years noted that every major advance in civilization had come from species learning to work together despite their fears. The most surprising support came from the warrior clans of Rigel. These fierce fighters issued a challenge to the galaxy. If small soft humans can find courage to befriend the great hunters, then perhaps we have all been cowards, hiding behind our fear instead of seeking understanding. On Harmony 1, the alliance was producing remarkable results. Thunderstep had begun sharing Vorthok knowledge of planetary ecosystems. The adults could track weather patterns, predict natural disasters, and identify resources that other species might miss. In return, the humans shared their technology and scientific methods. Moonwhisper learned to use computers and became fascinated by human mathematics. She could solve complex equations that helped with resource management and space navigation. The cubs continued to grow, but their development was different from wild Vorthok. They retained their predator abilities but combined them with human-learned cooperation and empathy. "They're becoming something new," Dr. So Young observed. "Not fully human, not fully Vorthok, but something that bridges both worlds." The breakthrough came when the cubs began helping with actual work on the station. Hanuel's enhanced senses could detect mechanical problems before human instruments noticed them. Nuri's curiosity led to discoveries about alien plant specimens that had puzzled scientists for months. Baram's strength made him valuable for heavy construction work. But he was so careful that he never damaged anything, even the remaining alien. Crew members began to see the Vorthok differently. Velthor, who had been most opposed to the Cubs, admitted that their presence had made the station more efficient. "Still dangerous," he said stubbornly, "but perhaps useful, dangerous." The real test came when an emergency struck the station. A solar storm damaged the main power grid, leaving half the station without life support. The repair work was dangerous and required someone to work in spaces too small for humans in full protective suits. Without being asked, the 3 Cubs volunteered to help. They crawled through narrow maintenance tunnels, following human instructions. To repair damaged cables, their natural agility and enhanced senses made them perfect for the job. Working alongside them, Thunderstep and Moonwhisper used their strength to move heavy equipment and their keen senses to locate problems. The Vorthok and humans worked together as a team, each contributing their unique abilities. The repairs were completed in half the time it would have taken humans alone. More importantly, the alien crew members saw the Vorthok risking their lives. To save the station and everyone on it, they could have stayed safe, Dr. Kongman admitted quietly, but they chose to help us. Word of the Vorthok heroics spread throughout the galaxy. Suddenly, the narrative began to change. Instead of dangerous predators, some species began to see them as potential allies who had proven their loyalty. The Galactic Council was forced to reconsider their position. Ambassador Thexnine returned to Harmony 1 with new instructions from the Council leadership. "The emergency has changed the political situation," the ambassador announced. "Several member species have requested that we study this alliance more carefully before making any final decisions." But the ambassador also brought disturbing news. A faction of hardline species was planning to take direct action against Harmony 1. They had formed a military alliance called the Predator Elimination Force, and they were preparing to attack the station. They believe that destroying this experiment will send a message to the galaxy that predator-prey cooperation is impossible. The ambassador explained. Captain Daejung immediately began preparing the station's defenses. But Harmony 1 was a research facility, not a military base. Their weapons were minimal, and their shields were designed to protect against cosmic radiation, not enemy fire. "We need to evacuate the station," the captain decided. "Get everyone to safety before the attack arrives." But Thunderstep approached Dr. Yansu with an urgent message. The adult Vorthok had been in communication with the pack on Kethra's surface. "They had a proposal," he says, Yansu translated, "that the Hunt people will protect the station. They will show the fearblind ones that Vorthok choose their friends carefully, and they defend them fiercely." How? Hyanwu asked. Thunderstep's response was simple but profound. He says the pack on the surface has been learning from our example. They want to prove that predator species can be guardians as well as hunters. Within hours, the space around Harmony 1 filled with ships from the Predator Elimination Force. They demanded the immediate surrender of all Vorthok on the station and the termination of the alliance. But they found the station protected by something they had never expected, a fleet of Vorthok ships that had emerged from Kethros' atmosphere. The predator species had learned to build spacecraft by studying human technology and applying their own understanding of natural forces. The Vorthok ships were unlike anything in the galaxy. They moved with the grace and speed of their creators, but they were equipped with advanced weapons and shields that combined human engineering with Vorthok natural abilities. The leader of the Predator Elimination Force demanded that the Vorthok stand down. Instead, they received a message broadcast. On all frequencies, it was Baram, now nearly full-grown, speaking in both Vorthok and human languages. "We are the bridge builders," he said. "We are the children of 2 worlds, raised by kindness, taught by patience. We choose to protect those who showed us that strength can be gentle and that love can overcome fear." The battle that followed was unlike any in galactic history, not because of its violence, but because of its restraint. The Vorthok ships could have destroyed the attacking fleet, but instead they used precise tactics to disable weapons and trap enemy ships without killing anyone. When the Predator Elimination Force was helpless but unharmed, the Vorthok made their point clear. They had the power to destroy, but they chose to protect. They had the instincts of hunters, but they had learned the wisdom of mercy. The galaxy watched in stunned silence as predator and prey species worked together to end a conflict. Without bloodshed, it was the beginning of a new era in galactic civilization. 1 year had passed since the battle at Harmony 1. The galaxy was a different place now, and the research station had become the most important diplomatic center in known space. Dr. Haiyan-Wu stood in the main observation deck, watching ships from dozens of species dock at the expanded station. Representatives from worlds that had never spoken to each other were now meeting regularly, all because they wanted to understand the miracle of Vorthac-human cooperation. Baram, Hanuel, and Nuri were no longer cubs. They had grown into magnificent, adult Vorthac, but they were unlike any of their species that had come before them. They moved with predator grace, but spoke with diplomat wisdom. They could hunt with deadly efficiency, but chose to heal conflicts instead. "The Andromedan delegation has arrived," Yunji announced, approaching with her usual smile. She was now the station's head of interspecies relations, a job that had not existed before the alliance. "Good," Haiyan-Wu replied. "The Andromedans have been isolated for centuries. If we can bring them into the galactic community, it will prove that any species can learn to cooperate." Through the observation window, they could see Nuri greeting the new arrivals. The young adult Vorthac had become the station's best ambassador. His combination of predator presence and gentle manner had a unique effect on visiting species. They respected his strength but trusted his peaceful intentions. The success of the Vorthac Alliance had led to the creation of the Interspecies Compassion Initiative. Dr. Haiyan-Wu now directed this program, which sent mixed teams of humans and Vorthac, 2 worlds throughout the galaxy. Their mission was to find and help other species that had been misunderstood or feared. The mission to Zarian Prime was successful, Taemin reported, joining them at the observation window. He was now the initiative's chief engineer, designing new technologies that combined human innovation with Vorthac natural abilities. "What did they find?" Yunji asked. "A species of crystalline beings that everyone thought were just living rocks. Turns out they are highly intelligent, but communicate through geological processes. The Vorthac could sense their communications. Through ground vibrations, it was a typical success story for the initiative, time after time. The combination of human empathy and Vorthac senses led to discoveries that single-species missions had missed. The most remarkable change was on Kethra itself. The Vorthac homeworld was no longer a forbidden planet that other species avoided. Instead, it had become a center for learning about survival, natural harmony, and the balance between strength and wisdom. Thunderstep and Moonwhisper had returned to the surface to establish the first Vorthac Academy. Here, young members of various species came to learn from adult Vorthac how to understand natural systems and develop their own potential for controlled strength. "Remember when everyone thought predators could not be teachers?" Dr. So-Young said. Joining the group, she had been documenting the psychological changes in both species as they learned to work together. "I remember when everyone thought orphaned predator cubs should be left to die." Haiyan-Wu replied quietly. The conversation was interrupted by a familiar sound. All 3 cubs, now adults, approached with news of their latest assignment. "Peace, Father," Haiyan-Wu, Baram said, using the title the Vorthac had created for him. "The Council of Many Voices has sent new requests." "What kind of request?" Haiyan-Wu asked. Hanuel stepped forward, his gentle nature still evident despite his impressive size. "Fear species on world called Tremor Place need help. Their young are born different. Parents reject them. Many die alone." "Sounds familiar," Yunji said softly. Nuri, ever curious and eager, added more details. "Different young ones show signs of peace nature instead of fear nature. Parents think they are broken. But maybe they are bridge builders like us." It was exactly the kind of mission the initiative was designed for. Another species struggling with children who did not fit their traditional expectations. Another chance to show that being different could be a strength instead of a weakness. "When do we leave?" Haiyan-Wu asked. "Already prepared," Baram replied with what might have been a smile. "Ship ready, team ready, mission of mercy ready." As they prepared for departure, Haiyan-Wu reflected on how much had changed. The galaxy that had once been divided into predator and prey species was slowly learning that cooperation was more powerful than conflict. The Galactic Council had officially recognized the Vorthok as a full-member species. More importantly, they had established new protocols for dealing with misunderstood or feared species. The default response was no longer isolation or elimination, but investigation and potential cooperation. Other Redditor species had begun to emerge from their isolated worlds, inspired by the Vorthok example. The Shadow Hunters of Midnight Prime had made first contact with the peaceful collective. The Storm Warriors of the Barrier Worlds had begun cultural exchanges with the Garden Tenders. Each new alliance brought challenges, but also possibilities, that no single species could achieve alone. The shuttle to Tremor Place is ready, Captain Daejung announced over the communication system. He had been promoted to Admiral and now oversaw the entire initiative fleet, as the team prepared to board. Their ship, Dr. Yansu, approached with her latest translation work. She had been studying the records of extinct civilizations, looking for evidence of past attempts at interspecies cooperation. "I found something interesting in the ancient archive," she said. "A prophecy from a civilization that died out 10,000 years ago. What did it say?" Haiyan Wu asked. Roughly translated, "When the hunters learn mercy and the soft ones learn courage. When the young of the feared are raised by the gentle, then shall the stars sing with one voice instead of many screams." They stood in silence for a moment, considering the implications. Had other species tried this before? Had they succeeded or failed? "Maybe it does not matter," Bahram said thoughtfully. "Maybe each time is new chance. Each choice is fresh beginning." As their ship departed, Harmony won, heading for another world where frightened parents were abandoning children they did not understand. Haiyan Wu looked back at the station that had become a symbol of hope throughout the galaxy. The research facility had grown into a small city in space. Humans worked alongside Vorthok, who cooperated with crystalline collective members, who shared knowledge with gentle ones, who traded ideas with reformed warrior clans. Species that had feared each other for millennia were learning to build something together. It had all started with 3 helpless cubs crying in a cave, and 3 humans who could not bear to let them die alone. "Peace, Father," Nuri said. From the pilot's seat, new world ahead shows signs of intelligence. Maybe more bridge builders waiting to be found. "Maybe so," Haiyan Wu replied, watching the stars stream by the viewing window. "Maybe the galaxy is ready for more miracles." Behind them, Harmony 1 continued its orbit around Kethra, a beacon of light in the darkness between worlds. Now expanded into a cultural center, a simple plaque had been installed on the wall. Its simple plaque had been installed on the wall. It read, in the languages of 23 different species, "None dared raise the predator's young, except those who dared to hope that love is stronger than fear." The galaxy was still learning that lesson, one rescued child at a time in the deepest reaches of space. Other orphaned young of other feared species waited in the darkness, crying for help that might never come. But now, for the first time in galactic history, there were those who listened for those cries, and when they heard them, they dared to answer. The age of compassion had begun.